Morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning. Good morning to those of you online as well. Everyone in the hall, can you please be seated? Welcome. Thank you. So we would like to officially welcome you to this what promises to be a very insightful 2 hours. As you can tell, we're still coming in the hall, but we're going to start on time. But Nigerian time is on time today. All right, so just a couple of things before we start. First of all, please, can you make sure that your phones are on silent? Just so that we don't distract whoever is here or beside you. And also we have people online who are joining us online. So if you're in the hall, please make sure your phones are on silent. I believe those joining us online are not able to unmute themselves, but if you are, please make sure you stay muted the entire time. As Dr. Zion comes on to speak to us, give us more information about why we're all here. And then we have a panel discussion, a talk on a specific subject. If at any point you have questions, please don't hold them in. What you can do is we'll pass around small notes, notepads, like post-it notes, sticky notes, yes. And then you can write your questions down and just let one of us know, and we'll just take your questions. And we're going to make sure the questions are asked even after each session, okay? So please put away all distractions. If you have questions at any time, you see us around, just raise your hand and we can come and help. But until then, I'd like to specially introduce the host of this event. I've been blessed to be trained by her in counseling, so I know that she knows what she's talking about. And we have the added bonus, you know how we are in Nigeria, she's coming from London. So she has foreign qualification, but seriously though, because I've actually been trained by her, I know that she knows what she's talking about. So can we, I know, even if some of you that don't know her yet, please, you still have to give her a round of applause as she comes on. She deserves it, all the accolades. Dr. Zion Ekundare. Over to you, ma.
Hello, everybody. Good morning and welcome to our, I guess I'll call it a roundtable discussion. It's an absolute pleasure. And I'm saying hello to everybody online too. It's an absolute pleasure to have you join us today. I believe that you're going to be really blessed. And I hope that, today is going to be a day that will be memorable for each and every one of us. So why are we putting this on today? We're putting this on because I'm sure all of you know that in the last 2 years, the world has changed. The world has changed in ways that we never thought possible. And sometimes we wonder if the world will ever be the same, the way it used to be before. It looks like we're certainly in a new normal now, and we're going to be flowing with that. So part of what we want to do today is just highlight some of the challenges that we have been facing as human beings, as a human race. Personally, I have a particular burden for young people, and I'll explain to you why. When I grew up, sometimes when I think about my youth, I wonder if I'm actually living on the same planet. I think, how did life change so much? But that's the reality we're dealing with. And the truth is, the pressures that younger people are dealing with, we perhaps did not. So that's why I think it's very important that more than any reason, we should resource ourselves to be able to support ourselves, to deal with change, to deal with everything that's going on. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. Now, I have a guest who will be talking to us soon. And I kind of selected the topic suicide for him to talk about. And the reason is because at the end of the day, what all of us fears is suicide. There's no human being alive who does not fear the S word, whether it's somebody you know, and I'm sure every single person knows somebody or knows somebody who knows somebody who has experienced it or had it happen close to them. It's a very unpleasant topic. It's not a topic we like to talk about, but it's the reality of the sign of the times that we live in. So I want someone, I want him to talk to us. I want him to help us, because at the end of the day, that is what we're trying to prevent. We want the people that we work with, the people in our churches, the people in our communities, we want them to be happy and well so that we don't get to that. So I thought we'd start with that. So without further ado, I just want to check that we've got Dr. Ogbolu now. I want to introduce you to Dr. Raphael Ogbolu. He's a psychiatrist. He's been a psychiatrist for over 10 years. He specialized in Nigeria as a consultant psychiatrist with Lagos University Teaching Hospital before he moved over to the UK. And his area of specialty is general adult psychiatry with a special interest in suicide prevention. I don't know, I was very surprised myself to discover an organization called SERPIN. That's the Suicide Research and Prevention Initiative, which was set up in the Lagos University Teaching Hospital. And, it's a non-profit organization which is at the forefront of suicide prevention in Nigeria with a presence in 35 of our states. So they're doing awesome work, including the Federal Capital Territory. Now, I know you'll probably be thinking, what does somebody want to see about suicide? That I can vaguely find interesting, because for most of us, suicide, is a very distressing topic. But I can promise you that I know for a fact that when you listen to Dr. Ogbolu, you will see suicide in a different light. You will understand it. You will understand what it's all about. You will understand, how we can, I wouldn't say navigate suicide, but how we can live with it as a reality. So I want to encourage you, as you listen to him, if you have any questions, please write them down, because he's going to have the opportunity to answer questions that we may have. If you're online and you have questions, please post them in the chat, and we will get Dr. Ogbolu to answer the questions. So are we good to go? Or should we do our icebreaker first? Okay, let's do our icebreaker. Okay, can I have that first slide up then? Let's do the icebreaker. Okay, I want you to grab your phones. If you're with me, please grab your phones and type in www.menti.com. I don't know if we have Wi-Fi access here. www.menti.com. Yeah, request free access. This code is not complete though. It's not, there's more to it. It's not just 5348. There's another, that's just half of it. Let me give you the rest of the code. It's 53482564. I don't know what's happened to the second half of the code. Are we there yet? 53482564. Okay, are we ready? Okay, we're going to do a bit of have a bit of fun today. First of all, let me just tell you something. This quiz is anonymous. 2564. Okay, first, as I said, it's anonymous, so don't feel embarrassed. It's not about, these are not things that you're expected to know. I just want to get you thinking this morning, and I want to get you to be part of what we're talking about this morning. So can we switch to Menti now? I think we're good to go with that. If you click the present and then, put it up for us. I think I'm out of the wave of the camera. Five, 3, 4, 8, 2, 5, 6, 4. 2, 5, 6, 4. That's the bit that's missing. 2564. That's really weird. 2564, yes. Are we good? Yeah, if you just share the screen, it will pop up. Yeah. It's just not showing. Oh, okay. Okay. Apologies, we're nearly there. As wonderful as technology is, this is when you look and you think, wow, thank you. Okay, so here we start. Have people, I take it people have answered the question. Okay, so 1 in 6 individuals between the ages of 10 to 19 years suffers from mental health issues. Do you think it's true or you think it's false? Everybody thinks it's false. So what's the answer, please? You all think it's true. Excellent. Okay, so next question, please. Oh. Okay. I think there's probably a bit of a jag. So according to the WHO, how common is mental illness in Nigeria? What do you think? Okay. 5 people think are we all done? Okay. The answer, as you can see, is 1 in 4 people. Those are quite frightening statistics. I mean, if you bear in mind that we're a country of how many people? 2 billion, are we? 206 million, and a quarter of us, that's 50 million people are suffering from mental illness. And this is according to the WHO. So they are not, figures that I just pulled out of a hat. This is official. So next one. So according to the WHO statistics, where would you rank death by suicide amongst 15 to 29-year-olds globally? Do you think it's the 4th highest cause of death, the 2nd or the 7th highest cause of death? Just guess. It's all over the world. Oh, nobody thinks it's the 7th. Interesting. So 4th or 7th. Are we ready? Okay, if you give us the answer, please. It's the 4th highest cause of death in the world. I mean, if you think of all the diseases, if you think of all the accidents, natural disasters, drugs, if you think of, just think of cancer, think of HIV, think of COVID, for suicide to be 4th, that means it's something that we should really be paying attention to. So next question, please. According to the WHO, how often does someone die by suicide? Every 10 minutes, every 5 minutes, every 40 seconds? What do you think? What do you think? Just guess. I'm hoping we'll all learn something from this today. Just give it another 10, 2, 3 seconds. Are we good to go? Can we have the answer, please? Can we have the answer, please? Enter. It's not answering. Okay, you'll be pleased or not so pleased to know that it's every 40 seconds. Every 40 seconds in the world, somebody dies by suicide. If that is not frightening, I mean, when I was going through that, I was actually speechless with horror myself because I couldn't believe that every 40 seconds, somebody dies by suicide in the world. So next question, please. Now, according to Africa Check, what is Nigeria's rank in the number of suicides per year? Are we the 7th highest in the world? Are we the 15th highest? Are we the 7th highest in the world? What do you think? Because I'm trying to bring it home now to us in Nigeria here, that how, yeah. Please feel free to discuss, amongst yourselves. Okay, maybe just for me. So, and the answer is 15th. Yeah, 15th. So, next question, please. This is in, yeah. No, it's in the world. It's actually in the world. Yeah. So what percentage of people with mental health challenges in Nigeria have access to medical treatment? What do you think? Less than 10%, between 10 and 20, between 20 and 30? What do you think? The answer is obvious. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, give it another second. Okay, can we have the answer, please? Yeah, 11. Less than 10%. So for anybody who is thinking of entering into the space to assist people with mental health challenges, you know that you're supremely placed. I wanted us to know that we are really needed, because if less than 10% people have access to care, it just means that the care just doesn't exist. What exists is not enough to go around. So if anybody's having any doubts about whether, starting up a career in helping with people with mental illness, I hope this has convinced you that there is so much scope. Nobody should feel intimidated. The sky is empty over Nigeria when it comes to support for people with mental health issues. So, next question, please. And I want you to think about this because this is for you now. I want you to think on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is very poor and 5 is very good. So 1 is very poor, 2 is poor, 3 is okay, 4 is good, and 5 is very good. How would you rate your own personal mental health today? Just think about it. Where are you? By reality, no. Let's put faith, if it's possible, to put faith aside today and say, where exactly am I? Because I'm trying to bring it home. I want us all to think about it for ourselves, that, okay, this is not just about, you know what I mean? This is not just about those people. For ourselves, where do we find ourselves? Where do we fit into this place? For those of you who are just coming, if the instructions are at the top, but I guess we're just about finished now. So, very good. I'm very glad to see this, that we're leaning towards the 4. So many people feel that their mental health is good. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So we're in good company today. There's a lot of faith in that. Okay. Okay, what can I say? At least we don't have excellent. Then I'll know that, okay, that is blind faith. But you must also remember, the Bible says faith without works is what? Thank you. So let's keep it moving. And I believe this is the last slide. And that's because I know that churches are represented quite a bit today. Do church attenders experience higher levels of mental health and emotional well-being? What do you think? True or false? These statistics are from America, by the way, so. Yes, sir. Sorry? Ah, you're very welcome. Yes, sir.
The chances that neurosis will be solved, psychosis will be halved is extremely high. That's the general thing, okay? You attend the church, you mediate, and the effect on your mental state is better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. According to these American statistics, the answer is that churchgoers have significantly higher levels of mental health and emotional well-being. And I wonder why. What do you think is the reason? Exactly. Well, I hope I've made you think a bit about this. We're going to switch over to Dr. Ugbolu now, who will tell us a little bit more about the interesting aspects of suicide and what it means to us. So if we're ready, over to you, Doc.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello? 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 Hello?
We can hear you.
Hold on, sir. We can hear you online, sir.
Okay, good.
Just give us a second so the people in the hall can hear you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Are we good to go?
Yes, we are.
Okay, just 1 minute.
Just give me a
I promise
minute.
you that you're in for a treat. Honestly, it's very rare that you meet somebody who is so eloquent, who, you know, I work with a lot of psychiatrists, and psychiatrists are wonderful people, but they have this, you know, psychiatry is not an exact science, and quite frankly, it's very complex. And a lot of them, they talk about things, but if you're not really medical, you can be struggling to understand, you know, what they're saying because it's so technical. But every so often you stumble on somebody who has just a natural ability to simplify things that seem quite complex and make them so accessible and so easy. And quite frankly, Dr. Ugbolu is one of them. He's always blown my mind with the way, you know, these complex things, he just makes them happen, you know. I'm so sorry about.
Can you hear me?
Okay, there we go. Hello, Doc.
Hello? Hi. All right.
I can see you, but I can't hear you. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you. I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Good. May I be unable to share my screen? Can I share my screen so I can begin? Hello, can you hear me?
White sand.
Can you hear me now?
Sky,
Okay, good.
rolling surf.
Yes. Okay,
Okay,
are
we're just
you
working on your sound. and our
okay? All right,
sound.
no problem.
Ah, okay.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, we just need to be able to hear you now.
Okay. Technology sometimes. So I guess those online can hear me, but just the physical audience. Hello?
It's gone again.
Hello? Hello?
Hello. Yes, we can hear you.
All right, good. Okay, may I start now? There's a bit of an echo.
Hello. You can start.
Please unmute yourself now and start, sir.
Okay,
Thank
can
you,
you
sir.
hear me now? Okay, good.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right, great. Thank you for having me. I caught up with the quiz session, and that was quite helpful. At least, sure it's got a number of people thinking, about several things related to mental health. So I'm just going to hone down a bit on suicide. I mean, it's a topic most people don't like talking about, but I think it is important that we do, especially in the 21st century. So I'll start quickly by just talking about what health is, okay? And that for us to understand that according to the WHO, health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease. So the fact that you don't have a disease doesn't necessarily mean that you're healthy. Okay, you have to be in a state of complete physical and social well-being. And the definition from many people has expanded to include spiritual well-being, because it's believed that your spiritual well-being also ties into your social well-being, mostly, as well as your physical and mental well-being. So you won't be wrong to say that it is a state of complete physical, mental, social, and spiritual well-being, and not merely the absence of disease. Mental health on its own is defined as a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with normal stresses of life, can work productively to make a contribution to his or her own community. And that's really important. It's not just about you living. You can't be a passive entity in your own life. You should be able to be productive and contribute to society. So what happens when health goes wrong? When physical health goes wrong, I mean, anyone here who has had even an acute physical health condition, especially when you're unsure what is going on, what's wrong with you, it can make you quite anxious, apprehensive, fearful, and it can affect your mental health. That's basically what's happening. Same thing, when mental health goes wrong, it can actually affect physical health in a slightly more complex ways, including not even seeking help for your physical health. Now, both of these, both mental health and physical health, affect social well-being. It goes without saying, when you are not physically well, it will impact on your social well-being. And clearly, when you're not mentally well, it will affect your social well-being. When your mental health worsens, it can lead to suicide. And then, so that's us in today's discussion and topic, and why it's important that we understand the concept of suicide. So what is suicide? Suicide is a very simple definition. It's the act of taking one's own life. And as you heard earlier on during the quiz Mentimeter session, I mean, it's quite common. People globally, every 40 seconds, someone is dying by suicide. Approximately 800,000 to 1 million deaths globally. And this was as of 2017, and WHO had anticipated that would rise to about 1.53 million by 2020. Of course, we do not know the impact that COVID has had on these figures, possibly has driven it higher. Soon we'll be able to have those data. It's among the top 20 leading causes of death. Males die by suicide twice more than females. However, females attempt suicide more, and that's been found to be because while women may attempt suicide more, the methods that men use tend to be more lethal. And so they are more likely to die from the methods compared to. Still talking about global suicide, about 85% of suicides occur in low and middle income countries, which Nigeria belongs to. Unfortunately, data is unavailable, largely unavailable for most of the developing world, including Africa, because it is usually not reported. It accounts for about 1.5% of global deaths. And it's said that for every death by suicide, about 20 to 25 people have attempted but didn't die. And it's estimated that each death by suicide affects an average of about 6 people. Those survivors, the family, friends, and colleagues, it really does impact on people. So in our environment, what are the common methods that people tend to use? Ingestion of poisonous, corrosive chemicals, sniper comes into mind. Drug overdose, hanging, jumping from a height. And rarely in our environment, people use fire to die by suicide. What are the things that we found are risk factors for suicide? Depression. Globally, all over the world, including in Nigeria, depression is the greatest contributor to suicide. And that was why in 2017, the World Health Organization tagged the theme for the World Health Day, not the World Mental Health Day, World Health Day. The theme was depression, let's talk. Because it was quite concerned that the rates of depression globally had risen, and with that, the rates of suicide. Substance abuse, especially alcohol, people who have previously attempted suicide, people who have physical illnesses, especially terminal, painful, debilitating, and stigmatizing illnesses like epilepsy, AIDS. Those are things that tend to put at risk. Family history of suicide, alcoholism, family history of alcoholism, or other psychiatric conditions. Other psychiatric conditions, especially if untreated. It's been found that the risks are somewhat high among divorced, widowed, or single people, people who live alone, who are unemployed or retired, and people who have suffered difficult bereavement, especially in childhood. Now, more recently, the WHO has released the suicide rates for Nigeria, 2019. Previously, the rates we had were the 2015 rates. Now, this is what the figure is, the crude rates is about 6.8 now per 100,000 of population, and that is quite high. The interesting thing, according to the WHO statistics, if you can see from there, the rates are highest among those who are 85 and above. And this is not something that people immediately recognize in our environment, but by experience, they are often not recognized as being at risk of suicide. And I've had quite a couple of elderly people who died by suicide simply by jumping into the well, running before vehicles be knocked down. And so it's a number of times we do not, because of how most of them pass on, it's not often recognized as suicide. And we tend not to ask them about feeling depressed, whereas depression is quite high amongst them. The other problem is most of them do not seek help. The younger ones are more likely to seek help. So what are the warning signs of suicide? Any change in behavior, because there's no specific thing to say, if you see this, it means this person is suicidal. But any change in behavior among anyone around you, please ask. That's the best thing to do, because some may be typically lively, sociable, and then suddenly they're not. But we have seen that people who are not, who are more reserved, suddenly becoming very vibrant, talkative. That's also a warning sign. So any change, social isolation, I can't talk enough about that, and we'll still talk about it again. People talking more about death. And this is quite common amongst people who have, especially those we've interviewed who attempted suicide who didn't die. They had talked about death before they attempted. Some of them have actually talked about suicide, but it's just that they've told family members, friends, and those ones just dismiss it. Oh, it's not your portion. Oh, how do you think about that? They're actually letting you know that something's wrong. Some of them begin to hurry to settle quarrels, debts that they have. Some will procure means, planning on how to, end their own lives. Some behave in ways that expose them to risk of death. Dangerous driving is quite common. I remember when I had the first workshop in 2017, my organization, the Suicide Research and Prevention Initiative, and the then Commissioner of Police informed us that they see quite a number of people who tried to die by suicide by running into the divide on the road, running into the street lights and things like that. And then when they've gotten there early in the morning and found the person knocked out, sometimes they wake the person and the person, oh, I'm still alive. So people actually do that as a means of, so that's why, again, it's difficult to capture the exact picture. Because if you saw someone who had an accident, ran into a vehicle, and you thought, well, you won't think that person did that deliberately, especially, and you won't know they're already dead. Unfortunately, there are suicide websites that tell people how to die by suicide step by step. Anything is on the internet these days. And so those are part of the challenges of living in 21st century, especially for young people, children particularly. It's difficult to completely bring down those websites. You can report them, but they keep springing up. And so people have actually died by following instructions of these websites. The other thing, talking about suicide, is to note that if you do happen to see anyone who is feeling depressed or suicidal, please do not trivialize the reason. People will say, oh, how could you feel depressed or think of ending your life because you've lost a job, or because somebody jilted you or left you in a relationship? That's not your business. It's not your headache. Because the concept of psychological pain, only that person who is going through that pain can feel it. It does not have to make sense to you. So don't try to make sense out of it. So it's often not helpful when you're trying to minimize or trivialize the person's reason. They simply won't talk to you again because you can't seem to understand that this is what hurts them, not you. And children and adolescents as well, they go through psychological pain. So to dismiss it means you're telling the person not to talk to you again. Childhood depression is something that's quite common. I thought you mentioned it here because we often tend not to understand it. So it should be identified and should be treated early. And in relation to that, school mental health is very important. But we have challenges in preventing suicide in Nigeria. And one of the biggest challenges is stigma. And stigma because people are in denial when they have mental illness. They don't want to accept it. And of course, people do stigmatize people who have mental illness. And so they will hide incidents of mental illness, and even when they're suicide, people will not report it. We've had people come who have clearly died by suicide, and their family members bring them to the morgue and ask the pathologist, please do not write suicide as a cause of death. And this is because the society stigmatizes even families where a member has died by suicide. I've met people who went to depression because they had to leave their hometowns because they could not marry from their hometown because some member of their family had died by suicide. And why this is very important, I'm hoping that with talks like this, we're able to destigmatize suicide and mental illness really, is because nobody is immune to it. Anyone can be affected by mental disorder. Unfortunately, the greatest form of stigma that affects mental illness is self-stigmatization. And that's you stigmatizing yourself when you suddenly find that you have a mental disorder. Okay? And that's because you may have treated people who had mental disorders unfairly. You may have stigmatized them. You may have abused them. You may have felt they didn't belong to your society. And so you suddenly find yourself on the other side of the divide. And so self-stigmatization becomes a major issue. So there's no doubt that there's discrimination against mental illness. Over spiritualization also makes stigmatization worse. And so it prevents people from seeking medical treatments early enough to address their mental illness. Criminalization of suicide attempt by law in Nigeria is also a problem. It attracts 1 year imprisonment or a fine. And that's, we're hoping that currently the National Assembly, we have a mental health bill, and we're trying to push that they change the laws so that it's no longer a criminal act. There's very poor reporting of suicide in the media. Okay, this is related to the criminalization, the stigmatization, and media reports describing in full detail how the person died by suicide, which is wrong. We've held workshops with some media houses to try and address this. There's poor funding of treatment of mental illness, so you often have to pay out of pockets. And most other conditions we know in Nigeria, it's not fully funded, you have to pay out of pocket. But the problem with mental illness is it's often not that person who has to pay, it's someone else who has to pay. And so that makes it even more difficult. There's inadequate coverage of mental disorders in NHIS. There's a shortage of mental health personnel, as has been mentioned earlier on before I started my talk, and the lack of up-to-date mental health act in Nigeria. So just to give you an idea about how people are struggling, my organization, we have hotlines, and people call the hotlines. And as of 2020, we had received about 286 calls through the hotlines, and about 178 of them were people who were in crisis. At that point, they were actually thinking of ending their own lives. The youngest caller was someone aged 12, and the oldest caller was someone aged 71. So you can see the wide range. And so it affects both the young people and the elderly people as well. Unfortunately, 73% of them who called, of those calling in crisis, were actually thinking of suicide. Okay? Although most of them did not have a plan at the time they called. But those of them who considered a plan were thinking of poisoning themselves, either using a sniper. And about a few of them, 17% roughly, had actually attempted in the past, also mostly using poison. What were the main things that drove people to consider suicide, according to those who called our hotlines? Most of them were people who were in financial distress, and those who were having relationship difficulties, followed by those with health issues and problems. Some people they couldn't identify what was making them feel depressed and suicidal, and that happens. Sometimes there isn't anything that the neurochemicals in the brain just become abnormal, and some people just feel depressed. But by and large, since inception, since we've had the hotlines, the top two reasons why people have felt suicidal and depressed have been relationship issues and financial issues. As a matter of fact, earlier on, the highest commonest was relationship issues. And so I think it's something we should, as a community, begin to talk more about people, how they go into relationships, how they manage relationships. Most of them had an underlying mental health condition at the time they were calling, and most often it was depression. So a few had substance abuse disorders as well. As bad as it is, there are some factors that we know can reduce the risk of suicide. So it's not all bad, okay? But what are these factors? Effective treatment of associated causes like mental depression, substance abuse. Family support is very important. Strong perceived social support is quite crucial as well. Resilience and coping skills. We'll talk a bit more about resilience. The religious faith, positive values and beliefs. Now, I know when we were doing the Mentimeter, there was something that said that people who go to church or are faithful are more at risk. Yes, there have been studies that suggest that. And that's because, well, the explanation behind that is that not everyone who goes to church or who has faith has positive values and beliefs. So some are struggling to develop positive values and positive beliefs about life. And that's actually what's more protective than the actual having a faith or going to church. So just to explain that. It's similar to a study, I'm sure most of you must have heard the study that's been circulated quite widely that Nigerians are the happiest people on earth. If you actually read that study, that's not what it says. It's actually that we're the most hopeful people. And that gives the impression that we're happy. So just to put that into context. So some of these studies, you have to really read them deeply to understand what exactly is the crux of the matter. Now, restricting access to lethal means definitely is a protective factor for suicide. Peer group affiliation, especially for young people, the appropriate peer group. Okay, and the ability to seek and access help is very crucial in protecting oneself against suicide. Still on the risk factors for depression and suicide. A lack of social support. I said I'd mention that because we find that amongst people we counsel a lot. Those who come, call the hotlines, who counsel over the phone or on the face-to-face. And one major affectation from social support is spousal loss. It's no one prays for it, but men are particularly not well prepared for spousal loss. That may sound strange, but that's what we found. And studies have found that they have quite a high reliance on their spouse for support, especially those of them who belong to certain professions like mine. Male doctors have very limited social network. So when you have limited social network and you have high reliance on your spouse for support, and that person passes on, you're really at risk of developing depression and other mental disorders. You struggle. Friendships, that's something that studies have found to be protective and help you build resilience. Unfortunately, it's not just friendships, it's close friends. And these are non-relatives. Sometimes relatives, we share intimate issues with and who support us. That's what those friends are. They have both physical and psychological value. Studies have actually linked cellular immunity to social connections we have. A meta-analysis found that strong social relationships is related to a 50% reduction in the risk of death, mortality. However, it is the number and strength of friendship that is a predictor of mental well-being, not just having friends, the strength, the quality of the friendship. Still on friendships, when your career becomes your only friend, loneliness becomes your companion, especially in retirement. And this is something we've also found, and this is one of the major risk factors which explains the WHO table I showed earlier on, where the rates of suicide were highest among those 85 and above. They suffer, more people are dying, friends are dying, spouses are passing away, their health is waning, and some of them have struggled with retirement, and that becomes a big problem. Unfortunately, the definition of friendship has changed over the years. So now it's less physical and it's more virtual. Studies have shown that the quality of virtual friendships does not come close to the quality of physical friendship. For it to be protective and help you build resilience, there has to be social contact, face-to-face physical social contact. Not so you can have millions of friends on Facebook. It doesn't count. It doesn't really produce any incremental change in your resilience. So it's actual friendship that matters. What are the other things we found? I did mention when I talked about those who call our hotlines financial difficulties. So we cannot ignore this. It's part of the challenges you have to face in the 21st century. Economies are tanking and problems. So it will always be an issue, but especially for those who are poor savers and those who carry quite a lot of societal pressure to care for other people. It's unfortunate. I mean, it's just what it is. But we have to mention it is one of the factors we have found. I talked about retirement. One of the reasons why some people's job, their prestige is tied to their job. So when you lose that job, you struggle. Of course, when you're retired, there's a change in status. And so I remember giving a talk on for retirement to the retirees, and they had quite a lot of psychosocial stressors. It opened my eye to quite a number of challenges that come with retirement, which people tend not to be prepared for. People do not plan for it, and people do not often talk about it. So how do we deal with the challenges, mental health challenges in the 21st century? I've talked about resilience and ways that we can build resilience. Unfortunately, we have to understand that the times we live in are different from how they were 30, 40 years ago. A typical example, I often tell people, when I see counsel, especially mothers who have struggles with their children, I hear them say, oh, when I was your age, I remind them, you were never that child's age, in actual fact. Because age is a function of not just years lived on earth, but the times you live in. And if we're fair to the children, the times we lived in the 70s, 80s, is totally different from the times they live in now. And so we have to really adapt. They don't know those times, so they don't really have to. We are the ones who have to adapt. And building resilience for young people these days is a major challenge because of the different pressures, exposures that they face. And they do not understand social interaction the way we do. I'll give you an example. And that's why I'm talking about this, because I know quite a number of us will have children or will counsel children. And it's very important that we try to get them to socialize. To highlight this, when we were young, we would play football, in the streets, compound, and oftentimes we would use stones, shoes to create the goalposts. And sometimes the ball went over the goalpost, okay? And we would argue, was it a goal? Was it not a goal? Eventually, because we have to continue playing, we would have to all agree whether it's a goal or not. Now, those are things you don't learn in the classroom, but unknown to us, just using this as an example, because we had that face-to-face physical contact, we were learning to negotiate with people. These are life skills that were being taught. We had to compromise, agree to disagree, and learn to get along with people even if we disagree with them. Something as simple as that. And sometimes it would be the boy who owned the football that says, look, it's a goal or it's not a goal. If you disagree with him, he takes his ball and he goes home. And so again, in a way, we're learning to appreciate the role of power, okay, and authority, because that person has power and authority. Because if they take the ball, we can't play again. So, but these days, when you have people having to play on online games, okay, or play virtually, they don't have this opportunity for that social contact. So we have to understand that in the context of the world they live in today. And I dare say some adults are also guilty of that because they become more virtual than physical. And what happens is your resilience is dropping, okay? You're losing that resilience. So one way to build resilience is, people need to learn coping skills, and sometimes they only learn it by social interpersonal contact. I've already talked about building friendships, which is very important. I've mentioned social contact, which is key, and managing stress. I'm sure almost everyone here will have attended one workshop or the other on how to manage stress. This has been overflowed, but it's still very important. Many people still don't know how to manage their stress. Then that brings us to the avoidance of comparison. It's a very big issue we find when we counsel people, not just, and both male and female, young and old. There's the comparison factor. People want to compare themselves. So you're living on Facebook comparing or checking out your friends' photos. Where did they go for summer? What did they do? You're just putting yourself through unnecessary stress. And those are the things that affect your mental health. So if you're doing it because you want to compare, you need to be cautious. Remind yourself, are you engaging in these social media activities because you're trying to see how others are doing and compare them to yourself? Competition is healthy. It's good when it's healthy, or not, but it's detrimental when it's not healthy. So people need to avoid comparison, and you need to teach your children to make sure they don't get into that realm of the comparison factor on social media. And we found that quite commonly amongst young female adolescents, especially those going through puberty, and the number of them go into depression and they lose their self-esteem because all they do is compare themselves with other people. You have to let your children and yourselves know that you're good enough as you are. People need to have a life plan. It may sound very simplistic, but it's very effective. And most people I've spoken to don't have an idea. They have no plan for their life. If you live day by day, then you're likely to expose yourself unprepared for life's challenges and unprepared for stressors. Everyone should have a life plan. It may be a yearly life plan. It may be a 5-year life plan. It may be very simple, but you must have a goal and direction on where you're headed and how you get there. The other thing is people need to speak out. Okay? And I'm thankful that this is one avenue, hopeful that people are learning to getting information from this conference today that will help them speak out and help them seek help, because that is crucial. At the end of the day, despite the resilience, the building of friendship, social contact, managing stress, sometimes you can still break down. As you remember when I showed the table on causes, those who call our hotlines, some of them don't know why they went into depression. And we couldn't identify any reason. So sometimes it happens even if you're not facing challenges. And so it might be hormonal. Some women who go through menopause are at risk. Some women who have postpartum depression, sometimes it's not the woman's fault, So these things do happen, but you should speak out and seek help early enough. Medical-religious collaboration is very key in our environment. And the reason why is several studies in Nigeria, not just for mental health, but for physical health, have found that people's path to care, to seeking care, is very tortuous, long, and winding. And because with most people will first start off when they've broken the cycle of, okay, this is not my portion, they'll probably speak to their pastor or their imam. Some will go through traditional healers, eventually before they come to the hospital. And so mental health is not no exception. So people have wasted time going through these phases, these cycles. And what we realized that for most people, the first port of call is their religious leaders. And so in 2017, my organization began to have collaborative workshops with religious leaders, because if we help them understand how to identify depression, they'll know those cases that they can spiritually counsel and those that they can refer to us. So I think it's very helpful that we recognize that and compose that. So in conclusion, I just want to say that suicide is real, but it's preventable. Depression is the largest contributor. And just before I leave, let me just say a bit about depression. Over 300 million people globally are affected by depression, and Nigeria is no exception. And as I mentioned, in 2017, WHO tried to get all of us, every single person, to understand how to recognize depression in the person sitting beside you. So as an example, I just want to mention today, everyone attending this conference, anyone listening to this can pick depression, can at least screen for depression among people around you. And there are just 3 things you need to find out. 1, has this person been feeling sad and low in moods almost every day for at least 2 weeks? That's the first question. And the sadness is the kind of sadness you feel almost throughout the day. and nothing can seem to cheer you up. Okay, so not just occasional sadness, that is not depression. Okay, that's the sadness you feel when you've lost someone close, that quality. Somebody experiences that almost every day for at least 2 weeks. The second thing is the person has lost interest in things they used to enjoy doing. If you want to write this down, please, I think it's very helpful. Because at least going away from today, everyone should be able to recognize depression in a friend, a relative, a colleague, simply by asking these questions. So low mood, sadness, almost every day for 2 weeks. Two, the person has lost interest in things they used to enjoy doing. So if you're someone who would love to talk over the phone, suddenly to make a call is a difficult thing. The person used to enjoy reading novels, listening to music, watching Nollywood, all of that is gone. Even when you make them do it, they don't enjoy it the way they used to enjoy it. That is the second symptom. The third thing is a loss of energy. Suddenly that person is feeling tired all the time. Their energy level has dropped quite significantly. They find it difficult to get out of bed. Anyone who has one, two of these is most likely to have depression. And please advise that person to seek professional help early enough. So if there's nothing you take away from today, please take that away. Also, that I've mentioned that suicide is underreported. Collaboration is very key, and hotline services, which organizations like mine have, is very key. People can call it. Please try and circulate it and let people know. Thank you very much for listening. And those are the hotlines on display there. I hope I have made sense. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. You can't hear them in the hall, but they were appreciating you by applauding. I'm sure you can hear. Thank you so
Okay.
much. So much. That's honestly such an eye-opener. You know, I was actually one of the things I held on to was in the older, we hear about the younger people now, suicide in teenagers, but to hear about, when I saw that table and I was like getting to the older, like, what? Are you serious? So that's a lot to take in. And even for the last things that you just shared, sir, about signs. We look at people, or you look at people and realize they don't want to do anything anymore. The things that used to excite them are not exciting them anymore. And we just think, they're just going through a phase. I'm sure all of us have seen at least one or two people, or even some people have experienced it. And then even that, the tiredness, I just thought about it, that wow. And people cannot explain it. I'm tired. And we just think, oh, you just need to rest. It must be work. Wow, thank you so much. And obviously, if I go on and on, but thank you so much, sir. For everyone here, remember, if you have questions, you can write them down and someone will come and take them from you. Because of how informative, so much was said. What we're going to do is, so yes, you're going to be part of our panel. We have you on our screen. and you'll be part of the panel as we address the questions. We've gotten at least three questions so far from what you just shared. And it's interesting because two of them have to do with suicide in older people. Someone says here, such a comprehensive presentation. Thank you. That's well said. So we're going to go into our panel now. And I'd like to invite all our panelists. I can even start. Hold on a second.
I thought it was a tough question when it was asked, but then, like you said, as Aji spoke, I realized, a lot of these things stare us in the face. I think, for instance, we generally agree that older people just like to talk. You understand that? I mean, I get on the phone with my dad now, and he's repeating things he said already. He's going over the same old thing he said last week. So I just try to find something else to do while he's talking so that, I can justify the time. But I'm there. I just, yeah, and we just go on and on and on. And he'll probably still say the same thing next week. And that maybe says something to us already, which is ensure they have avenues and, environments to just talk and stuff like that. I think isolation is also, we seem to have this, and this may come with our times, but we just seem to have this general attitude towards old people. You understand that?
Yes.
They're, so they're old people. Exactly, and that is like auto, isolating. And I'm happy we don't have that culture of, taking people or shipping them to homes.
Yes, it's not the same here. Yes, that's so true.
Yeah, it's something I struggle with because I know my time is going to come. I don't think I want that. Yeah. So keep them talking like Ajay said, but also ensure that we are very communal in Africa. And we need to keep that. You don't see that everywhere. There's a lot to that. There's a lot of advantages to that.
Yeah.
So keep them from being isolated. Keep them talking. I think if even those two should go a long way.
Thank you, sir. Oh, I'm just thinking of a lot of things that I'm still can't get over it. Like we've missed out so much concerning older people. Our grannies, our older parents as well. Wow. Okay, Dr. Zion, anything for us on this or?
I think it's all been covered, but what
Yeah.
I will say is, I think next week in the UK is Mental Health Awareness Week. And interestingly, the theme is loneliness. And that's because, even from the, follow on from the pandemic, they've realized that people are so lonely. And so they're pushing it out there to raise awareness. So, I must confess, I was quite surprised at those statistics too, that it never occurred to me. You all put time aside. I remember when my mom was alive, I used to have times when I used to call her. And sometimes my daughter would think I'm wicked because I just put in the AirPods, I'm cooking and I'm like, yes, And as far as I'm concerned, knock yourself out, 2 hours. It's on a weekend. I'm just, yes, mommy, yeah, yeah. But she was happy, She was happy because it wasn't a rushed conversation. It was
company.
You're tired.
It was company,
Yeah,
yes.
it was company. So,
Yes.
yeah.
I like that you said that, though. That's a good one because I have a friend like that. People still laugh at us, and I'm talking for 2 hours, and we're doing our own thing. Sometimes I'm busy working or whatever, and she's there, And I can imagine how that will help anyone that is dealing with loneliness. Do we even have anything like, I'm thinking about how all these awareness days and weeks, we say we don't do them in Nigeria, but I honestly think some of these things we should adopt them because we're not aware of these things. And this is why people get frustrated with us Christians, because they say we're too religious. We just brush everything under the carpet. So that statistic, when you did the quiz, Mama, and it was like people that had higher scores for their mental health were people that went to church. I thought, wow, we don't even realize how important it is. Some people don't know to have God, to be able to focus on Him and unburden everything on Him. Okay. Okay, let me see if I can just, thank you so much. We have so many questions. Someone says that, hold on. You mentioned childhood. I'm going to combine 2 childhood depression questions. First one is that Dr. Emeka mentioned childhood depression. At what age can a child experience depression? Then second one I'm going to add to that is how do you identify depression in children? So I want to start with Dr. Emeka again because he talked about this.
All right. So from the age of reason, which is believed to be from 7, you can recognize depression in children. It doesn't mean that younger children cannot be depressed. We haven't been able to rule that, but they may not be able to verbalize it. One of the common things, unlike adults who can express, how they feel, children cannot. So what you tend to see at, especially younger children, changes in behavior. And common things you want to look out for to recognize are bedwetting. That's quite common. Children with school refusal, often falling sick, and they go to the hospital, doctor can't find any reason, they keep complaining about tummy aches, the child is most likely depressed. So that for the younger children is symptoms, unexplained physical complaints, changes in behavior, getting into fights in school, a child who previously wasn't, okay, stealing, suddenly beginning to steal. So for the younger ones, yes, as they get older, they begin to express more, and then they can express those questions those 3 questions I talked about. But for the younger ones, they're not likely to tell you what experience low mood, loss of interest, and all of that. No, but you can't pick them. But these are the ones, and it's just to highlight, the youngest child I've met who was depressed clinically in practice was an 8-year-old. Okay, and she had unfortunately was knocked off by an Okada with her mom and her younger brother. They both passed away. She wasn't aware. She had to have her leg amputated. And this young lady was in the hospital, and she actually attempted to die by suicide by going to the toilet to hang herself. And when I spoke to her, she said, I mean, and that's why I talked about psychological pain. It doesn't have to make sense to you. The worrisome concern for this young child was, look, she's missing school. She's missing her friends. And we keep telling her that she's waiting for a prosthetic leg. And that was her frustration. So as young as that, children can experience depression. We tend not to use medication for those before the adolescent age. So usually counseling and other things help with them. I hope that covers it.
Well, that's really helpful. Thank you so much, sir. And I think something to note, the fact that even with adults as well, is a change. There's something changes. So if anyone is wondering, I think for anybody at all, I think any age, one thing I'm picking up here is the changes. But I've heard about that age of reason as well. That's age of 7. I just think 7. I think back when I was 7, what did I know? But I'm thinking back about the things that I used to take, I used to keep, in my head, and I burdened myself with for a long time. Thank God I'm not depressed, but to hear that it can be at such a young age. Wow. Dr. Zion, what do you have to say?
I think, I just have to, I'm just going to reiterate what Dr. Bolu has said about children. And for me, it's that the important thing is that change, as you said. They start bedwetting. They start, a big one. I remember when I was in school, I was bullied. I won't even tell you why I was bullied. Should I make you laugh?
Please, let's.
Okay, I hated eating, so I wouldn't eat my breakfast. So the last thing that would happen, just before we left the house in the morning, my dad would take the egg on my plate or whatever and stuff it in my mouth and say, eat it. But I won't swallow it. I would tuck it in my cheek and go to school. And there was this fellow, sadly he's no longer with us now, who would come to me and say, I've told you never to come to school with food in your mouth. So I started hiding, I wouldn't want to go to school. And if you bear in mind, I had 2 older ones who used to go to school and leave me. So when I started school, I was very excited. The whole family knew that I wanted to go to school. Then suddenly I didn't want to go to school anymore. And I would be crying and carrying on with my bread and egg or cornflakes or whatever it was. And then one day my dad said, there's a problem. There's a problem here. So he followed me to school and said, there's something wrong with my daughter. I don't understand. And the truth was that, as it turned out, I was being bullied. So it's that change, that somebody who used to do something suddenly stops doing it. A child who doesn't, and it's not just depression. I remember a friend told me that her daughter used to be very friendly and used to play. And then suddenly somebody, a neighbor, a family friend, every time the neighbor came to the house, this child would move away, go quietly. And this neighbor used to pick them up from school. She didn't pick it up. It was her mom who said, wait a minute, there's a problem. Have you noticed that every time this man is around, XYZ clams up? The man went to jail. That's how, just leave it, So it's just to be, I guess for me, the message is for parents. You have to be aware. You have to keep an eye on your children. You have to observe them. You have to care. You have to listen to them. When they don't want to do something, there's a reason. If they don't want to go somewhere, engage with them. Help them to be able to feel free to tell you. And how do you do that? So instead of saying, no, it's not true, or dismissing them as they've
Yes.
said, listen. Even if it doesn't make sense, listen, because there's
Yes.
something in it somewhere. So
Yes.
that's me.
So true, and I like that part. If it doesn't make sense, and we do that. Even I know we're focusing on children, but for anyone, you just think, well, it's not a big deal, or you think that kind of thing will not have any issue. It won't be an issue for me, but we have to be attentive. And it's not like, knocking on any parents or anything. I think we're moving forward now. Pay attention. And it's your parents know their children. They can see something different. Don't just think, yes, it's just growing pains or teething problems, getting used to school. I like it. You're excited about school, and then you changed. Why? Thank you so much. PT, anything? Oh, yeah.
Won't answer it from a medical, but I think my own learning is keep your eyes open. You understand? Look out for. So we tend to be very dismissive, especially with kids.
Yes.
Oh, he's just being naughty. My wife is a counselor and therapist, and I think I have learned a lot just from living with a counselor. Because trust me, some things she says don't make sense. You know what I'm saying? Oh, he's just being silly. Oh, no, dear, we need to, come on. You know what I'm saying? And stuff. Yeah, but that has helped because I've seen her also counsel, and I listen in on some of her sessions, and I almost can't believe what I'm, yeah, because I'm the pastor, we tend to reject a lot of things.
And then we see that the reality is people are dealing with so much. Correct. And that's something that we need to, I'm really thinking about it. Even growing up, how from parents, aunties, even friends, when people just dismiss things and say, no, that's how the Western people do. We're not like that, we're hard, we're this. And we're ignoring these things. We're ignoring things that can actually be. I like what Dr. Emeka said. Even though there's, a high chance of suicide, depression, all of that, it can be reversed. Something can be done about it. So can we stop? I know, yes, PT, I reject. Since I'm very, I'm spirit-filled too. But that's the thing. Let's even identify that there is an issue and something to deal with, right? But children, Sis Aji.
Just to add to what has been said, more and more it's occurring to me that the village doesn't raise the child anymore. Growing up, if you're down the street at the wrong time of the day, someone will spot you and they didn't have mobile phones, but somehow that message will get to your mother before you get home. And, you face the consequences,
Bush telegraph.
Ma?
I say call it bush telegraph.
Bush telegraph. Somehow you'll be wondering, these people flying, how did my mother know? Faster than a mobile phone, and you will face the consequences. And so, but these days, everybody's minding their business before it is tagged child abuse, before you're, being identified as overstepping your boundaries and so on and so forth, Before then, a look is enough from an auntie, not even your mother or your father, and you rearrange your brain, or your mind, as it were. So that's one. So all of us being communal. Yeah. And I think also, I was talking to my brother a few days, some time ago. He's a counselor in England, and he was saying how about 15 years ago, they used to have this community where you would have a doctor, a nurse, a counselor, a police officer, a teacher. All of them will come together and they would focus on maybe John. John has a problem, he's been unruly at school, what do we do? They talk about it and then they find a solution. But then a new government came in and shut down all of those, platforms. And 15 years later, gun crimes, knife crimes, started to happen. And then it made me think that we actually have this naturally in Nigeria or on this side of the world. Maybe we should enhance it. Yeah. Instead of building more event centers, let's build youth centers. Let's put something together because the spirit of this age is really harsh on our children. 10, thinking about suicide. At 10, I was thinking about my 10th birthday party and the kind of cake I wanted and that I can play Pac-Man. And, you know, those are the things that were my own issues.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think Dr. Emeka said it earlier on that you are not the same age. When you say when I was your age.
Yes.
No, it's different. And
Yeah.
we're in a different age now and we need to be active
Yes.
about focusing
yes.
on them.
Thank you. We have so many questions. I think what I'm just going to do is I'll see which ones you can address. For everyone online and here, please just, try and be as understanding as you can be. But I have, there's a question here that I think is worth, I'll just ask maybe Pastor Tunde. I just had the question, apologies, and it's just gone away. It just has to do with, being a Christian. I'm trying to paraphrase. Yes, as Christians, we believe in the absolute supremacy of the Word of God. Where does talking therapy fit into this narrative? And counseling, can both coexist? Can we, or do you think it's best, like you said, you just cast?
I think talking therapy itself is even counseling in some way. There's a scripture that comes to mind, if you permit me. James 5, it is verse 16. It says to confess your faults one to another that you may be healed. And faults there is your flaws, be vulnerable, your sins, and all that kind of stuff. And this is after talking about is any man sick, let him call for the elders, let him anoint him with oil, the prayer of faith will. And so I'm glad even there in scripture you see the physical one.
Yes.
And then
and
you
the
say,
face of,
and
yes.
then let him
I love
confess his faults. So I think both go hand in hand. It doesn't surprise me, for instance, the statistics we saw about churches generally producing or having more people with good mental well-being because the environment naturally stimulates fellowship. Ajay and I were talking about praise and worship, and joy. I mean, a merry heart doeth good like a medicine, is what Scripture says. So we need to. I mean, beyond. And we don't. I think. I think we're much more. I think we're much more educated now about these issues. I mean, in our counseling team, for instance, one of the goals I set for them this year was to specialize. You understand? It's really not all about open to James and open to, because the Bible gives general counsel. Yeah, but it's not going to talk to you about, and stuff. So specialize. Find those amongst us who are already specialists. So we have, my wife, who is a trauma therapist. We have a psychologist and things like that. Also look for training, which is why I was happy when, I was invited to this and I got the opportunity to have a chat privately with Doctor because we are eager to work. It was the medico-religious that Doctor mentioned. For me, the church is the doorway. I think churches now need to work hand in hand with professional organizations. Churches also need to know their limits. Not everything is deliverance and if anything, it probably even worsens the situation sometimes because you're going through this stuff. Someone says you need deliverance, you do deliverance, but nothing has changed.
Yes, so to say that,
and then you think, man, something is really wrong with me because if deliverance won't fix this, then you know what I'm saying. Yeah, so churches need to work hand in hand with organizations. Also consciously stimulate environments for fellowship because you can go to church and still feel lonely.
Yes, I was just taking everything out of my mouth. Yes. Yes, I was going to say that. Thank you, sir. Because there's the one hand of some Christians might look at the statistics and say, well, that's not what, I'm not part of the high, and they wonder why there are some Christians that would say that. Also that place of people going for multiple deliverance, right? We have in the ministry that I'm involved in, we found out that the people that just kept going, so they'll feel better for like a week or two, and then reality will set in, and they'll be back where they started. I realized that there was more to it. Yes. So apart from changing the mindset and all, they had to be educated. They had to talk, share whatever was going on with them. And because it's a counseling ministry as well, then they were counseled, then they were mentored, all of that. It wasn't a just, oh, let's go. The Bible says this, okay, 2-hour deliverance session, and it was over. I like that medical religious. I like that. I want to quickly ask another question. I'll just bring it to Sis Aji, and because there's so many. It kind of carries on from what hold on. No, I'm going to change it. Actually, I want to even know from us. Let me actually ask Dr. Emeka this question. I'll come back to you, Sis Aji. I want to know, have you had any? We've talked about suicide. High. The statistics are quite alarming, to be honest. But have you had any experience personally of dealing with the aftermath of suicide in your working life, sir? Have you?
Oh yes, I very quite unfortunately, yeah, more often than I would want. And one unfortunate group that we often tend to forget are the people who are left behind after someone has died by suicide. Some of them unfortunately don't want to be talked to, especially just after it's happened. They just want to, be left alone, and you have to respect that. But a lot of them go through a lot of difficulties. They question themselves. Did they contribute to the person's suicide? There's a lot of guilt feelings, and they themselves, therefore, are at risk of developing depression. And so I think we tend not to see them, okay, but they're a very important and at-risk group that we need to begin to encourage to talk and come forward. A number of them who do seek help, they get better because achieving closure, which everyone should achieve, which is the end point we want to achieve if we've lost someone, is difficult for people who have lost someone by suicide. Achieving closure is something they may not always be able to achieve, and we all need to help them to achieve that. And only then can they regain their own mental well-being.
I think because we're talking to professionals, experienced people, you might even just think about it more of from your angle, that how did it affect you? Meaning, like, do you feel like you did something wrong, you could have done better? I've heard from some people that have said they did everything that they could do professionally, but the person was too far gone. But even now to think of the people around, the family members, the friends, how they are affected as well. So something that seems so small, you think it's just one person, it blows up, it becomes something huge, then ends up in suicide. There's so much to deal with after that. Okay, so I'm going to, with that question in mind, and what Dr. Emeka just addressed, I want us to start to think about, we're in Nigeria, and, we've talked about stigmatization, and let's also think of the spiritual side of things. So I'm putting questions together, and I'd like to hear, Sis Aji, I'll start with you. So with that last question in mind, also the part of, with stigmatization being a major cause, preventing people from seeking help, then how do we tackle this challenge? And I think I'll stop there because I wanted to ask one, actually, Sis Aji, because it's you. We think about, depression, mental imbalance is one of the ways that people get depressed. And we have the aspect of depression caused by spiritual powers. That's someone's question. How do we address this, as taking medicine does not cure this? So let me explain why I put them together. The first one, obviously, dealing with suicide. Then just looking at how in this culture, we're all here in Nigeria, we know how many people can admit that they're depressed. How do we deal with that? How do we make people come forward with this? And then also think about that spiritual side. Like PT was saying, people just think it's a matter of buying cast, the end, but there's more to it.
Thank you. When PT was talking, I was just thinking that, he said we need to identify that deliverance is not just all about deliverance. And I was thinking to myself that there's also the, what I would call the deliverance of the mind, and I find that a lot of us are illiterate Christians. What I mean by that is not that you didn't go to school, but we're just not informed enough, about the realities of what is going on around us, within us as well sometimes, and that God is so in touch with what is going on per time. Again, as Peter was talking, I just thought about Joshua, Joshua chapter 1. Joshua was in fear. He was very afraid.
Yeah.
I mean, his big boss had just gone. The person that was his cover, more or less, that would take the lead. Now he had to take the lead. And he was very afraid. And he needed counseling. And it wasn't like he could turn to the people that he was to lead, because they were quite an interesting bunch of people. But God counseled him. God kept on saying to him, Joshua, be strong and be very courageous, you know. And I mean, you know, the Bible is written in a summary form. So you can imagine that it wasn't just one chapter of conversation that God had with Joshua. There was a continuous conversation, talking to him, listening to him, because there must have been some dialogue there. 4 times, God said, be strong and courageous, Joshua. Then let me move to Abraham. Abraham wanted a child. God had spoken to him. Genesis 12, 13, things were happening. 14, things were happening. By 15, he was tired. Where is this child going to come from? Am I going to go childless? God spoke to him. In fact, this time around, what the world would call visualization, God took him outside. Look at the stars. Start to count them. Let's see, you know. There was a mind shift. There was, you know, a complete mind shift. That's what God was trying to do. But, you know, Jesus is a fantastic counselor, the best coach you can ever come across. So these things are all in the scriptures, but almost as if sometimes they are hidden from us. And so I think to myself, we are the custodians of the truth to help with suicide, depression, you know. Throughout this meeting, I've been hearing in my heart emotional intelligence, that your emotions are intelligent. So we should not dismiss them. So you're feeling sad. Why am I feeling sad? You begin to, the other day I woke up feeling heavy. And I was thinking, why am I feeling this heavy? I started to ask myself those questions. And then I remembered that I had a dream. And then I remembered the content of the dream. And then I remembered, oh, I need to pray. I need to do this. So do you see how I connected it? I tracked my mood. But if I had ignored my emotions of feeling heavy and say, I rebuke you, devil, you know, and I was not intelligent or leverage on the intelligence of my emotions, I wouldn't have been able to trace it and then go to that dream and actually use it to my benefit, you know. So then I know I'm saying a lot of things.
It's good.
And yeah, you asked a lot of questions. You know, but you know, and yes, everything starts in the spirit, right? When you're talking about depression, for whatever reason, I was thinking about leprosy. And I was thinking about how leprosy was dealt with in the book of Leviticus. It was priests that would actually sit down with a leprous person, with the leper, you know, and I mean, God was so intelligent and so detailed. He would say, look at the spot. Is it white? Is the hair on that spot white? If it is, isolate them, quarantine them. In fact, lock them down. There was lockdown in the Bible, you know, for 7 days. On the 7th day, as the priest, go back and check. Has it spread? If it has spread, then it is leprosy. And this and this and this is what you should do. There was leprosy of the skin, of the clothes, and of a house. There are houses that they had to shut down, you know, because it was not safe. So now that's the priest who is spiritual. He was hearing from God, dealing with a physical, doing practical stuff. You know, so when people say they have cancer, we don't stop them from going to do chemotherapy, right? We pray with them and we allow them. So when it comes to depression or a mental illness, why are the rules of engagement different?
You have to see it's still an illness, no matter what. I think that's so much. In fact, I want to pick up on some things you said, but I think one of them is that place of even how we've been saying, okay, look at others. Is there a change? What about you? What do you do with yourself? You know, do you, if there's a change, why? Or you just think, oh, no, I'm just tired. If you're tired for a week, why? If you're heavy when you wake up, why? If you're sad, whatever it is. So I'm going to pick up on some things you said. I'm just looking at this question and like, we have about 4 more that we'll try and address. Thank you so much, Ms. Aji. Now, looking at that place of, you know, we're still talking about how it's still there's stigmatization, people are not able to speak, you know, obviously we want to provide a safe haven for people to be able to, the church, wherever. And I know people say that they've dealt with it in church, that the church just deals and says, let's pray, or you don't know God, or something like that. So with that in mind, you know, Dr. Zion, I want to hear from you. What support is available for those who look after those with depression? You know, so we've said there's depression, like what Dr. Emeka haven't dealt with, people that haven't committed suicide, the family. But now you're dealing with the person, a family member or someone who has depression, because it can get very draining and it can even lead to this helper withdrawing. So what can help someone stay instead of withdrawing? And what can even help their own mental health so that they don't, I'm not saying I don't think can catch depression, but what I mean is you can also get burdened and it can affect your own mental health.
I think the truth is, even Dr. Bulu spoke about it a lot too, about this thing of relationship, about social contact. You know, if you're dealing with somebody, working with somebody who is severely depressed, clearly you need to create some degree of separation. You can't get sucked into that world with them. And it's easier said than done, but that's why we have forums like this, to raise awareness, to help people to begin to think, to begin to realize that there are other ways of doing things. You know, when we're even talking about the medical religious collaboration, just Thursday I was attending virtually a launch of a program in London called the Movement for the Recovery of London after the pandemic. This was the Mayor of London getting churches and parachurch organizations to come together, that this is not just a government problem. This is not just family problems. We all have to come together. There's something we can all contribute to ensure that we work together, you know? And so I think that it's all of us leveraging the different communities we're part of. If I know somebody who is supporting somebody who's depressed, I should make myself available somehow to, I may not be able to physically relieve them, but I can help distract them and just help them bring some fun into their lives. Let's go out. Let's come out with me. Visit me. I'll visit you. Let's do things.
Yeah, and I'm also thinking of, because I think it's something for us, like, you know, we can't deal with that today. When ATL mentioned emotional intelligence, I was thinking about how it is for everyone, for you as an individual, for you with someone that is dealing with depression, for a community. You know, this emotional intelligence thing, I think is something that a lot of us really ignore. And when people say, I have emotional intelligence, some of us don't even know what it means, to be honest. So when I just thought about, as you were speaking, and I just was looking back at what ATL just said, I thought, you know, there's a lot that we can even learn as we are here. You know, we can't just say, oh, I'm unaware of how to do this. There's somewhere to start. And Dr. Zion will be taking over in a couple of minutes, you know. But let's, and let us know how, you know, some of these questions can be answered, because some questions, you know, have to do with, how do I deal? This is going on with my daughter. I don't know if she's really, is she depressed, or how serious should I take it? What steps do I take? I'd like you to even address that, you know, as you're helping us round up, because it is true. Some of us are listening and thinking already like, oh my God, maybe my child is depressed. Do you know what I mean? We're hearing things are happening in schools, and I know some people that have said that like, kids are not going to boarding school anymore. So how do we even get over that, and we're not panicking as we're hearing everything you said, because you have said a lot of things, and Dr. Emeka has, you know, put a lot of things in our minds. So as you're helping us around up, you know, let's even look at that. How do you help people that have lost someone? So we've given us steps on how to, but how do you help, or what are the resources available? And also to help us, you know, give us, since you're coming from the abroad, you can help us here in Nigeria to know how we can make it less of a stigmatized thing that, oh, no, you can't say you're feeling depressed. How do we even do all those things? As I begin to hand over to you, I want to thank Dr. Emeka Online. Well, that was so insightful. We're still reeling for more that information. And thank you for also being a part of the panel. I'd like to thank PT. I always like when I see practical, spiritual people. It's so interesting. You think you can't put them together, but yeah, an example of how you can be, what do you say, medical religious? Is that? Yes. I like, yes, honestly, like, thank you so much, sir. I know we've learned a lot from you. I have definitely. And thank you so much, ATL. At least I know her, so I'm not surprised with what she said with all the wisdom. But thank you, because it's a lot for us to think about. And I know that Dr. Zion, as she wraps up, will be able to help us on, how do you move forward? What can you do for us as well? And what can everyone do for everyone? Thank you so much. Can we just give them a round of applause? Online as well, can we see your hands together? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adura. I think I'll talk about the stigma first. And this is the way I see it. I always try and explain to people that all of us know somebody who has hypertension, perhaps diabetes, maybe even cancer. We know people who have physical illnesses. And we don't decide that we're not going to deal with them anymore. We don't decide that we're going to ostracize them because, somebody's hypertensive. What do? We do everything we can to help them. We ensure they take their medication, get them to rest, they eat well. We go out of our way to facilitate them, to extend their lives, to use their treatments. You give them money that you may not have just to ensure that they don't break their medication. And think about it. When somebody has a mental illness, it's exactly the same thing. They're just as unwell. They need medication, they need support, they need help. They don't need to be pushed away. We may not fully understand why they have developed the medical illness, the mental illness. But I want somebody here to tell me how somebody developed hypertension. Most of the time, it's idiopathic. It doesn't have a cause, but it's there. It's their reality, and it is very threatening to their life. There is a very real risk that they will die. They can die suddenly from the hypertension. So I want us to start looking at mental illness that way. It's there. We may not understand the cause. We may or we may not, but it's there and they need help. And I think that's part of what today is about, to raise that awareness, to begin to raise that awareness. I mean, I've walked away with some things now that I am going to personally pursue, in terms of, we spoke about, Dr. Ogbolu spoke about us not having a mental health act in Nigeria. Yeah, I think that's something that I'm personally going to start finding ways of pursuing. It's very, very important. There are people who have mental illnesses. I mean, the other day we were looking at, some people will say something like autism is a mental illness. It's a mental disorder. The richest man in the world is autistic. Elon Musk is autistic. So the fact that somebody is unwell does not mean that they cannot contribute tremendously to society. If you've ever worked with Jewish people, they will always tell you that there's so few Jews in the world that even the Jew that can't even lift his head, they will find value in him. So we need to start finding value in people who are unwell. We need to start helping them. And here is where all of us come in, This is the time, as I said, we don't have enough mental health support. The churches, sadly, or very fortunately, are a natural rallying point. Everybody believes, we've said it, that when somebody is mentally unwell, even Dr. Emeka said it, that the chances are the first place they go to is the church. So for me, that's a good place to start. Let's resource the church. Let's resource the church to talk to people. I'm a counselor, and I've been doing this for almost 18 years. One day, my daughter came to me and said, I want a counselor. And I looked at her, are you joking? Are you actually, you want me to pay to do what I do? But when I thought about it, I realized that, you know what, this girl is correct. I'm her mother. So sometimes even in church too, people come to us and we're motherly, we're pastoral. I'm a pastor myself. We're pastoral, but they don't need a mom. They don't need a pastor. They need somebody that they can talk to, somebody that they can open up and, express themselves, somebody who will not judge them, somebody who will be, keep what they're saying confidential. I work with a lot of young people. Parents are always in my ear. I want to know what she said. And I'm like, no, you cannot know what she said, because if I tell you what she said, in your love for her, you're going to refer to it. And when you refer to it, she will not trust me anymore. But I give you my word. If there's anything that you really need to know, somehow I will find out, I will ensure that you get to know. So don't worry about it. But that means people must trust you. That means the mom must trust you, the child must trust you. These are the things we try and teach people. These are the things, these are the skills I'm trying to impart to people, that let's resource ourselves to be able to provide these services so that people will know that, you know, the fact that your child cannot talk to you, the fact that your mentee, the fact that the person that you're with, you know, you're overseeing in church cannot talk to you, does not mean that there's anything wrong with you. It just means that they know that your emotional response might kick in, and they don't want that emotional response. It doesn't mean that what you're saying is not true, but you've colored it with emotion. You know, we have to learn that even when people tell us dreadful things, we don't go, you know. People tell us dreadful things, we have to learn that art of letting them know that, you know what you did is very different from who you are, you know. As a person, you're still my little girl. I love you, you know. What you did, that's another story. We'll deal with it. So these are the things that we want to try and resource ourselves with. And that's why I thought, let's raise awareness. Let's begin to raise awareness. At the end of the day, everybody who came here, who's online, will send you information about how you can avail yourself of some of these services. Please, please, please train yourselves very well. Train yourself so that you can genuinely help people, you know. I have a burden for young people, but I'm actually now, from today, I've now realized that there are all these old people that somehow we have to develop skills for drawing them out. Somehow we have to develop it. I think, don't you think it's very, very disheartening that an 85-year-old will take their life? How many weeks do you have left that you are trying to help God? Why can't you, what can be so unpleasant about life that you, but you know, that's the reality for people, and we have to take that into consideration. So having said all of that, because I am very, very fanatical about time and keeping to time, I'm going to round up now. But before I round up, I just want to say thank you to so many people. Pastor Tunde, I've just met Pastor Tunde, but I've found a friend for life. Thank you so much, Pastor Tunde. This was, yeah, the kindness that you've extended in doing this with us, I'm so, so grateful. I know that you're a very, very busy person, and I really, 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 really appreciate you coming here. I appreciate you being part of this. I appreciate you, you know, sharing that wisdom with us, you know. So thank you so much. I'm grateful. Dr. Ogbolu, you know, the interesting thing, shall I tell you something about Doctor that I refer to as my friend? We've actually never met. We've actually never physically met, but as I say, he inspires me. He inspires me with his wisdom, his insights, the depth of the understanding. And you know, he's not a one-trick pony. He's not just about suicide. I've heard him talk about other subtops, you know, psychiatry-related topics, and I can assure you that he's on the ball. So, you know, I'm not trying to plug him, but I'm just telling you for a fact that if you want somebody who can deal with these things and, you know, and who always makes himself available, it's Dr. Emeka. So thank you so much again. It's been an absolute pleasure having you with us today. Thank you very much to my dear sister Aji. You know, she's always been there for me, and I really appreciate her. Thank you so much. You know, she's crossed time zones to be here with us this morning. I'm quite impressed about how, you know, she is with us for someone who has really, really crossed time zones to be here. So thank you so much. Thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your support. Thank you for Adura, for stepping in and doing this, comparing so beautifully. I'm sure you all had a great time listening to her, and you know, the skillful way in which she just navigated all your questions. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you for answering the questions. Thank you for sending us questions. Thank you for coming. Thank you for, you know, joining us. But before I go, I need to say a big thank you to all the guys who have helped us set everything out today, you know. Thank you. You know, most of them have never met me. We've just been, you know, we've been communicating online. but you've done more than I can, more than I can imagine. If I was a part of your organization, I don't think you could have supported me anymore. And so I want to say a big thank you to our sponsors, Cornerstone Counseling Center. You guys have been amazing. I have been absorbed into that family, and everything you see here is all about them. So I just want you to help me thank, Pastor FOL, and his team. You guys have just, I'm not an emotional person, but I'm struggling because I have actually been overwhelmed by the support, the love, the belief in a vision that will make people go out of their way to say, I will make everything, I will make all our resources available to you, put it at your disposal so that you can, you can make this dream come true. And then I have a brother, brother from another mother. I already have one or two, but I have another one. His name is called Lanre Yusuf. Lanre, the truth is only God can thank you for me. I'm not sure that there's anything, if I had a check that I could put any figure on, I don't think it would do justice to the gratitude I have in my heart towards you and the appreciation. So I'm just going to say thank you. I know that God will thank you even more adequately than I ever could. And to all the organizations represented here today, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure doing this. This is the first of many. We're looking to maybe do another one in September. That's what we're aiming for. By God's grace, bigger. You know how life is. You want to improve on, not that there's anything wrong with what we've done today. It's been perfect from my perspective, but you want to expand. So get ready for September. And as I said, it'd be great. I will send you all the information about all the resources we have. The prices on it, but you have a 50% discount until the second week, I think it's the 14th of May. You have a 50% discount if you sign up to join one of the courses, one of the classes there. It will never happen again. We've been able to do that because, as I said, Cornerstone has covered, majority of the costs associated with this. But you'll get all that information, and I really hope that you will spread the word, you will send it on to other people, that you feel might benefit from this kind of training. And if you walk away, remember that we have a need. We have a need. The training is going to be very interactive. I have lots of friends. It's not going to be just me. I have lots of friends that are going to come in and are going to share. I think Dr. Ogbulu is a good example. I have many friends like that who will share their wisdom with you. So I guarantee that you will be blessed, tremendously. And that's the hard sell done. So
Thank you. Just a quick one before we officially close. If anyone has any questions, just for a few minutes, because obviously we know we've been here since 10. But if you have any questions, you want to have a moment with any of the speakers, you can stay behind, and I'm sure they'll be available for a few minutes, right? I've already put you in it, so you can't say no. So over to you. Thank you so much, everyone.
thank you.
And thank you, everyone online. Yeah.